great.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Pharaoh stream with myself, Pharaoh, and we've got a wonderful guest tonight. Ryan, welcome.
Thanks, Pharaoh. Thanks so much. Thanks for inviting me on.
Now, firstly, just a word of warning to everyone. We've been having several tech issues to try and getting this up and running. So apologies if stuff doesn't work out or we have to bail early. But first of all, I just wanted to say, really excited to have you on, Ryan. Really enjoyed looking through kind of your history and your kind of pathway to this position in time. I'm going to ask you a little bit about your kind of background, some of your history, and we're going to go through some of the kind of paintings that stood out to me as I was looking through everything. The first thing I would say, though, is obviously you're going to be joining us with the Power and Intimacy Exhbition. We've got a couple of pieces of your work which you've shipped in from Australia to the UK, which is really exciting.
Absolutely.
And then secondly, just that I feel like having seen your kind of body of work and your background, I think you're exactly the kind of guy that should be, you should be on TV or something like that, Ryan. I feel like you should be a national celebrity, and I think I think it's kind of part of the current. You're sort of symptomatic of our artistic age, is that I think a super talented person like you, Ryan, hasn't been kind of pulled up enough. If that makes sense, and hopefully tonight we'll kind of people will see that, and people in the UK will get to know you a little bit better. But just to kind of give a quick background to yourself, obviously everyone can hear the accent, Australian, born in Brisbane. Just tell me about, again, because most UK people were sort of familiar with some of the major cities in Australia, but what was kind of like early life like in Brisbane? Did you think it had an effect on your art at all? But what was kind of the kind of early years of Ryan like?
Yeah. Thanks for those comments and that really complimentary introduction. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Brisbane. What to say about it? I mean, it is one of the smaller cities of Australia. It is considered a sort of large country town still, though it's growing and there's lots of people moving there. The weather's beautiful. It's sort of towards the tropics, and there's a lot of sport. There's a lot of great lifestyle and family things there. There's not a lot of art. So, however, there's always, pockets of artists and individuals who are super talented. So I was really lucky there at a young age. I was probably 14 going on 15 that I was introduced to quite a rare little classical art school. And so I got to meet professional and senior artists, lifetime practicing artists who were, very serious. But they also, I think importantly, they had actually balanced lives. Like they weren't, they weren't the sort of stereotypical risk-taking artist or whatever like that. They had families, they had homes, they travelled, they had careers, a huge body of work. They were dedicated artists. So, I sort of was first exposed to that kind of thing. It's looking back, I realised that's helped me. And just to go on a little bit, I mean, Brisbane itself, the landscape and environment is a big part of the area. It's very green, very lush, very hot often, and so it was a place that I sort of you could say escaped from, but just in the sense of a young person getting out of their hometown. I've since returned several times and really enjoyed it. It is a wholesome place, but maybe not the place for a really dynamic career.
No, it's interesting. Like probably that kind of more provincial setting helped you in some ways, though, ironically, because I feel like a lot of the big city art paths that you will go on nowadays will take you more down a abstract or whatever contemporary quote unquote route. So it was maybe the fact that you weren't in one of the bigger cities gave you that kind of opportunity at the same time. I mean, one interesting thing about starting proper art training at 14 as well, I would say, is quite rare, really. In the UK, for example, you would do some informal training at that kind of age. But then people don't really do proper training at all until they hit university. I would say. I mean, they would do stuff in their own personal time, for example. But so again, I think that's really interesting. But again, that is the story of many greats. If you look at the Royal Academy, they're all kind of like starting at that early age. So again, I think that's really cool that you managed to connect with those people. And I'm looking through the kind of the notes. You kind of met two quite important people. I saw you reference them in your latest book that's out as well. Christine Kierkegaard and Kay Kane. I mean, that's pretty amazing that you managed to connect with someone at that early age and then maintain that relationship as well. Often you hear about, I had a great art teacher or I had a great mentor, but it tends to be kind of flash in the pan. But it'd be great to hear about your relationship with them.
Oh yeah, thanks for asking about them. They're excellent artists. They're wonderful people. They've stayed in my life for these decades, I suppose, and they were formative. Christine sort of operated this school. It was a very rare sort of school where they had this format of professional artists and getting in kids from school as well as older people to just foster this community of very serious learning environment. I've sort of seeked their help and advice over many years, and it's I suppose there's ideas that one sort of transcends their teachers and they leave them in the dust or whatever like that, or but no, they've become a part of my life, and they're wonderful from the beginning. They took me seriously. As a young sort of kid, you don't know what you're doing, and they were sort of, I don't know, just they liked me, but they supported my skills such as they were at that time, and um their example, I think, was important. But our relationship has changed. They're both still working. They're both still painting. And it's I suppose, it's just they were the biggest influence. I saw their art integrated into their life. It wasn't like they had secret lives or they had dysfunctional lives in any way. I saw it as their art as a natural process, just growing out of their world. And so we've been able to sort of dovetail and meet again at different stages of our life. But I've often sort of called them up or re-entered their lives in quite involved ways, and then flown away again. And we're always interested to see what whatever we're looking
What
at
you're up
or
to next?
experiencing.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's really cool. Again, and I think it's because what typically happened in Empire, for example, going back 100 years, is that that stuff in Britain would be kind of pushing forward, and then stuff would move a little bit slower outside of England.
Yeah.
But then I think you guys I think in Australia has just genuinely benefited from that, because that kind of relationship just doesn't exist anymore in the UK. People genuinely on the lookout for talented artists, and then supporting them and mentoring them the entire life is practically unheard of. Again, this is where I feel like I was kind of like a little bit shocked when I when I read
Oh,
through it,
really?
and I think it's
Oh,
I think it's really brilliant. And again, I think it's a real lesson,
yeah,
us thinking about future generations about,
yeah.
um, as this connection point with artists in the past. And again, I read there's a really good foreword in your book. We haven't mentioned the book, but we'll get to it in a
Mm,
bit. By Kierkegaard, and she talks about whatever this great legacy and history of
mm,
Australian landscape,
mm,
which
mm.
she's part of and you are part of. And I love that idea of connection and handing stuff down. Anyway, I don't want to go dwell too much on that. So an amazing kind of moment at an early age, and then you moved across to the Julian Ashton Art School. Now, again, I mean, I did a bit of reading around, but it seems to me to be kind of like a kind of a classically infused
Mm.
atelier style
Yeah,
learning, and there's quite a few of this kind of um, academies globally.
yeah,
Is that how you saw it as well? You just kind of learning the classical method. I'm imagining lots of kind
yeah.
of cast sculpture.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
what was that
yeah.
like?
You're right. It's yeah. So Ashton, Ashton came out to Australia and from England, excuse me, and I've started this school. It's produced over time some of our greatest artists. It's been a hub for many interesting people. It is based on, yeah, a sort of European or French sort of atelier model of learning. The student is sort of immersed full time in drawing, painting, even sculpture. There's models everywhere. So when I was there, it was there was models like 6 days a week. You could do a sort of 10-day pose over 10 weeks. You could do very ambitious work, very involved cast drawing, anatomy drawing, drawing from imagination, from memory, um, painting, sort of color theory. There was a lot of components to it, and it was attractive from Brisbane because Ashton's offered this, yeah, full-time immersive situation that was competitive. There was a young student body, so there was lots of yeah, just young folk just really pushing it as hard as they can in a big city. So it was sort of thriving and exciting, and it still exists. It's was a little bit hampered by COVID, but it's yeah, it's the oldest continuous art school in Australia. So it's a great example of that tradition. Walking into the place, it hasn't changed since the day I was there, like 20 years ago. So it's exactly the same. There's the same paint marks are on the floor. Just the paint is everywhere. It's really fun to dive in for someone like us. And yeah, nowadays there absolutely are these kind of more of these ateliers out there, perhaps in the more of the sort of American model. Um, but it's a rich tradition, and there's just so much knowledge and sort of passion there. You can't sort of kill painting. People just fall in love with it again and again. So
Mm.
people have really built a movement of a grassroots movement of learning and self education, rekindling this knowledge from past schools and schools of thought.
No, exactly. And again, I think it's sort of building up some of your technical basics, anatomy,
Mm,
value, composition. Um, so I kind of, again, this is me kind of reading into your biography, like from this kind of moment up to about 2015 is kind of like
mm,
your early stage. Now,
mm,
one thing I have noticed, Ryan, is that I haven't found any, like, not
mm.
much works from beyond 2015, although I did see in a couple of other interviews you do reference that on your Instagram. So did you have like an earlier style that you went for? um
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, well, I suppose it's just one of those. I've always been painting and so involved with that. I mean, I suppose I do have to make a decision about like when I was professional and what.
mm,
So there are so many works before 2015. A lot of them are sort of exploratory and you know, just different because you just try so many things like as a young person. And yeah, there might be some in corners of the internet. I do have an archive of those images. There's a lot of maybe a little bit more straight painting in the sense of you know, the sort of realism and sort of fairly straightforward representational painting. A lot of portraits,
Mm.
landscapes. I'm really sort of like testing the craft and challenging myself with different compositions and projects, like going out to the sort of west in the rural country areas and just doing a painting series on that area and sort of this was before the Hill End series, but yeah, at that time and before 2015, I did challenges like that, and yeah, I could very well bring them into the sort of archive on the website or show them again. Mm.
No, it was just interesting. I didn't know if that was like a conscious thing or not, because
Mm.
in another interview in 2016, you kind of
Yeah,
said that
yeah,
that people may be surprised at some of the work you were doing at that time in 2016. So
yeah.
I wondered whether you'd sort of gone
Mm,
through like different
mm.
phases. And again, I think that's just totally natural
Yeah,
for an artist as well.
right,
And it's a good
absolutely.
point about like whatever, becoming the professional as well. You know,
Mm,
saying, you know, the difference between juvenilia and
mm, mm.
I'm trying to create something specific here.
Yeah,
But the reason why I'm kind of focusing on 2015 is I think
yeah,
it's kind of like a bit of a seminal moment. It's where some of your kind of major works kind of kick off from, and that was the moment you decided to do this um, kind of period in Leipzig in Germany.
yeah.
And it was sorry, I've forgotten what's it called.
Oh,
It was like
yeah.
a it's like a residency sort of. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, correct. Yeah, so there's a number, but I went on. I suppose it's, as far as I know, it's still the official residency of this this premises, this set of buildings called the Spinnerei, and it's on the sort of it's just outside the city centre, and it's a quite a community of painters. It's a really exciting place. So I decided to, yeah, settle there and build a life there for a period of time.
Now I managed to, again, this is a bit kind of creepy. I did some kind of
Oh,
uh, digging, and I managed
oh
to
yeah,
find an interview that you did
that's right.
with ID magazine, and this is kind of like the space you're living in. And I was
That's
like,
it. Yeah.
I thought this was really cool. So I took a look at, I found an interesting little publication of the time,
Hmm.
and I was just doing a kind of a nose round, like who else was in there, and
Hmm.
it seemed like it was like all nationalities, you know,
Hmm.
Europeans, Americans,
Hmm.
etc.
Yeah.
Um, Although again, I mean, I was looking around other people's work, and I felt even at that time you
Hmm.
definitely stood out from everyone else, both in terms of your technical abilities, but also your subject matter.
Hmm.
You know, realist figures. You're probably, would you
Hmm.
say that you were the most realist person
Oh,
in your class at all, or
y-
what would you say the group was like?
yeah. Yeah. For it was this 6 month residency that I was on, and yeah, there were. It's quite eclectic. So you're right. The artists come from across the world. They did have a connection with. I think it was the New York Academy of Art. The residence program is called LEA, the Leipzig International Artist Program, and yeah, I would say though that the city and the residency does attract representational painters and and figurative painters. But for the period that I was there, yeah, you're right. There was maybe I'm, yeah, more towards that. Yeah, that direction, and focused on the figure more. The talent in Leipzig itself is incredible. They've kept their traditions, and they're a very unique place. So it's a city of hugely talented people. It's yeah, yeah. But the residency, yeah, was like a little sort of incubator, or a little sort of yeah, small little world within that place. And
Oh, cool. Well, the first work I wanted to actually look at was actually something just before this moment, and this was a portrait I found on your Kickstarter. You had a little mini Kickstarter to kind of generate some funds for that Leipzig trip. But
that's right.
there's something that captured me about this portrait, and I believe it's let me have a look at my notes here. It was Glenn Gillard.
Yeah.
And he was kind of like a president of one of the arts academies, and I just thought this was a really lovely portrait. And I've noticed that you've done a couple of portraits later on as well. So and this wasn't something you included in your list, but I just kind of threw it in there because I thought that was really cool. And again, I think for me this is the kind of work you're kind of producing even before that Leipzig period, and I think it just shows your the quality of rendering, technical ability, but also interestingly, like I think it's interesting to reference from a color palette perspective. And I just want to talk about Australian artists in a more broad sense. And again, this is all through the lens of a Brit, so apologies.
No,
but
that's great.
Australians are mostly known for their landscape work, and they're mostly known as colorists, interestingly enough. I've just been doing a little series on the interwar period in the Royal Academy. I've got one work here by an interwar Australian artist, Max Martin. He's very little known now in the UK or in Australia, really. He had he had 10 years in the UK and then sort of fell off the face of the earth. But there's quite a few kind of famous Australian artists, and sorry, I've only got a black and white version of this, but the colors are very, very, very vivid, and that's really interesting to me. That again, there's lots of purples and blues, what we call kind of dual tones in your kind of color palette, and I think there's a great vividness, even beyond the landscape itself. But hopefully people kind of watching this will be able to see this. Now, I noticed kind of a bit of a shift in the work during the Leipzig period. This piece is from the Spinner Eye, and it's one of the cellars inside. It's this kind of I don't know. It's like an anti-landscape. I don't know how you describe it. An inscape of this kind of cellar door. There's a kind of a fisheye lens effect. So again, like technically, that's very difficult to do. I think it's much easier to draw in perspective than it is to do a fisheye. What were the kinds of things that you were exploring with during this residency?
Yeah, so I mean that piece was fun. I remember it was very cold. It had these sort of iron tiles that are there that you see, and people kept coming in and out. These huge doors closing, and I just sort of set up shop there for I forget how many sessions. So yeah, it's painted from life, and exaggerated purposefully in a controlled way. Yeah, to get this sense of a fisheye lens or being in close proximity, and but generally at the residency, there was work like this where I was sort of observing and studying the environment. The buildings themselves are fascinating, for example. So they're it was an old sort of factory. It has that industrial sort of feel that's very popular. But there's a particular quality to the sort of East German architecture and its particular destruction and in character that a lot of people fall in love with. So I was part of the work there was observational, just sort of learning about the sort of light and the materials, the sort of aesthetic of the city. There was a lot of uh, actually, I think in that video with ID Vice, I'm sort of painting this setup of objects I found from there was these crazy antique stores. So there's a skeletal dog made out of it made like a puppet, and its anatomy is sort of is shown. It's just like paper and wire. So I was sort of finding these objects and bringing them together, walking through the streets and just finding weird stuff.
There you go.
There was a
I've
lot of imaginative
pulled
work.
it out there.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, crowning. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that, and there's a model in the top right, and that's her arms. So she came in. I did a bunch of drawings, and then incorporated those. The little character on the ground there is this sort of walking man that I've pasted onto the ground with tape. I forget what he's called actually, but
Oh,
he's on
he's
all
the
the,
crossing guy. Yes, yeah,
yeah. He's on the he's a figure on the road crossing lights, so to go green, this that figure flashes, and
yeah.
so it's just a sort of reference to that. The cards there are Polaroids by a photographer friend of mine, David Ashley Kerr, that I borrowed. He was also on the residency. He's a brilliant photographer, and now heavily involved in the arts in Australia. Even the little weird shopping cart, I forget where I found that. Probably just someone dumped at the Spinadai after a drunken night or something like that. I just found it. So it was a wild place. Though it was also the sort of center point of the art world in Leipzig. So it was uh, yeah, very, very rich. There's other work where I would and work for imagination and stuff, and drawings, and but this stuff was really fun to sort of observe and study, but also invent. So the green blobs on the ground I invented, and yeah, things are exaggerated for effect.
Well, again, I think that's kind of like one of your signatures is a, a quasi surrealist element to it. I don't know if this will be offensive. It's
No,
really it's sometimes difficult speaking to artists about their own art because they have a very different way of thinking about it. But you've got,
absolutely.
it's kind of like at the face of it, it's like a still life really. And I saw the scene that you're talking about. I saw the table and the blanket and the whatever
Oh, that's
the
right. In the
wooden
video.
leg. Yeah, but then you sort of layered on these kind of imaginative elements to it. Plus, you've done some tweaks. So, for example, like the table gets stretched out, and then you can see the perspective on the shopping cart. Like you said, has been exaggerated, so it kind of feel like it fits, but it doesn't at the same time. So it's a little bit unsettling. The
Yep.
hands, obviously, they are unnatural. There's also like it's that the hands are painted in a very like quite realistic, but also that they're sharpened up a little bit. And again, like I don't know what I don't know if there's a specific name for it, but there's like a bit of a squareness or a sharpness to some of the figures from this time, which I think comes through. But there is this kind of surreal or dreamlike quality to it, but not really in like a surrealist TM style. Like if you look at Dali, for example, everything has a place and a specific reason for things. Would you say that, for example, the hands are there for a reason, or is it again just part of this kind of dreamscape you're trying to build up?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the surrealism is such a. I love that. Love that movement, and so many of those artists. They're just so important and brilliant. Yeah, yeah, I mean, there are parts of it that are still a little bit opaque to me. I mean, potentially there's a sort of occult dimension. There's all kinds of extreme things sort of going on with their lives and ideas that yeah, you wonder how much that enters their work. Uh, I mean, just quickly on the figure. I mean, maybe that's a sort of foil or something like. I mean, those hands, they are a little bit more sort of faceted and structured. The sort of anatomy, the sort of spatial attributes of the body interests me. So, sort of simplifying, clarifying their structure, exaggerating, and pulling these forms. That kind of play is that even sort of drama is interesting to me in and of itself, whatever it sort of means. So it's sort of an immersion in the craft, and the composing process can be like that too. Like you have an idea of, the the hands sort of yeah, as you say, unnaturally sort of together, but potentially connected to that head in the background. It is this sort of in between world where it's convincing, but yet not quite, not quite comfortable, or not quite yeah, believable. So yeah, she's grabbing my pumpkin, which is sort of like littered or decorated with Polaroids and some fennel, and I think there's a tomato there. And potentially putting this sort of crown on a model's head. She was this young Bavarian girl who was there, so I was sort of thinking about all the sort of Bavarian history, I guess, and I sort of invented this quasi crown, or sort of saint-like halo around that dog figure, so that deep, fun sort of shape, circular shape around the head there is a sort of visual reference, a sort of compositional echo of that idea of the crown and the sort of hand formation wrapping around the pumpkin. So I guess I'm describing just a lot of the process of composing, which is just making connections and visually associated things, and tapping into ideas or potential narratives. They may not be explicit, it may not be a sort of linear narrative, but these associations sort of add up. They make a whole, and when they are satisfying, you stop. And I do like other people's interpretations, because, as you say, the artist is not always the best judge of their own work, but they may not be. They may not just have the vocabulary to really explain it clearly to others.
Well, I think that in itself is an interesting point, and I often see that certain artists have sort of built up a little story about works, or that they'll have started when they're actually working on it. They're thinking about something else, but as time has gone on, the years have gone by, they have because I think all great artists are good hustlers and good storytellers at the same time of their own work. So I think often there can be a little bit of a disconnect with what they say. So.
True.
But again, that was really interesting about the like whatever the halo detail being added on, and again, it's this point between imaginary and reality. But the fact that you have that kind of, you're grounded in that academics training, like, makes it much more interesting for me. And again, that for example, same thing with like Picasso and Dali and Marguerite as well. I feel like maybe Marguerite's a good reference point as well, because they could all do the realist thing very, very well, but they obviously chose to go down a slightly different route. And I think it means you can play with things a lot more, and it gives you much more many more tools in your arsenal. Anyway, but if you hold this kind of theme in your head, guys, because we'll see it coming in a few other times. We'll move on to this next piece here. Now, this is Proposition 54321. Now, again, when I was nosing through stuff, I did notice you had a little Kickstarter video that you'd started work on it before you'd gone to Leipzig, but you're missing the hands at the front. So it's kind of an interesting piece. You've got kind of a woman sitting in a chair. We've got a mirror, but it's not reflecting the view that we can see from the front. So you can see that the hands are missing here. We're sort of being placed as this figure, who's nude as well, which is also interesting. But there's the addition of the kind of the balloon carrier, who isn't present on this side. We've got all of these different kind of hands appearing. So again, there is this kind of like kind of unreliable narrator feel to the piece, and this,
I like
but
that,
but also, again, because it's all centered about the woman as well, and the name, again, Proposition. There is this element of this guy's obviously giving her a light. Are these various suitors attracted to her? And you're seeing all these kind of different moments. That's how I interpreted it. But I'd like to hear a little bit about this piece.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. That's a really perceptive sort of introduction to that. You've got a keen eye. Yeah, and tracking down that video, I still can't watch that video. It's so embarrassing. Not that I say anything silly, just that I'm
It's just normal.
telling myself. Yeah,
It's just normal. It's just normal.
yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, the paintings in the background. I have dated it from 2015 to when did I finish it? 22 or something like that. But it might have been 2014. I believe the video is from early 2015. Yeah, so basically, I started that a bit like you were saying before, that an artist can start with sort of an open mindset. They maybe not even be quite present. They're just exploring. There's maybe an element that they're really drawn to, and they want to establish and elaborate on the canvas. And so she was a model that I hired, and I had this warehouse at one point, and there was a space, and yeah, the mirror was sort of set up, the legs standing on the right, they're hers as well. So I had these ideas of her in the space seeing herself, and this sort of sort of split time, or it's obviously not quite clear it's her, but yeah, this um th these hands. I mean, I suppose it was just a time where people were coming in and out, and she was very attractive, and she was actually this American girl. She's a singer. She's very talented. I think her name's Nika. Like, it might be like a double I, Nika or something. And she was traveling around Australia in a band, and um, yeah, she was small, but she had a lot of presence, and I suppose
Mm,
I had a bit of a crush on her too. And it was just an example of a painting that took a long time to figure out what the hell it was.
mm,
So I did paint in various elements in the background and foreground, and I just sort of wasn't happy with it. I even took it to Leipzig. It was rolled up. I stretched it there. I was tweaking it, and it was one of those things that just tick on in the background of one studio, and so those things do get destroyed sometimes. And some of them last, and that was one
mm,
I just had to sort of rethink of, and continue thinking about. And I wrote a little statement of it on my website. I'm trying to remember that now, but really it was an interesting sort of creative process, because it was one where I'm sort of digging and reflecting on that initial experience, but also just letting the imagery and these sort of abstracted associations just let them resonate. There were periods where there was a little bit more, clutter and stuff in the painting, and I sort of stripped back. Um, and it is a bit creepy. I get that, like with the hands, they're exaggerated in sizes. Whatever they mean, they're disconnected from bodies. But I just sort of went with it, and what came through was. Actually, yeah, this is in the statement that I'd never heard her sing. Like, I kept hearing about
mm,
her performances and stuff like that. I knew she was out there touring, but I did sort of find her online, and she is actually quite amazing. And then I sort of basically made the association of these sort of worshipping characters in the audience, and her as a sort of figurehead, and that's clicked something with the concept of the painting. It was sort of there in the background, if that makes any sense. I was the painting wasn't thrown away; it kept going, and when I sort of made that association by seeing her perform, it just made sense, and I could kind of conclude
mm.
the painting, and the hands sort of really arrived as one sort of concisive thought. I conceived of them. I got a model. Did any amount of sort of compositional sort of ideas and so sorry, I'm rambling a bit, but it
No,
is
no, no.
it it is
It's really
like that.
interesting to hear the process, and
Yeah.
and also I think again that's such like a classic approach
Mm,
to
mm,
paintings as well. Like
yeah.
I think a, a lot of artists today are stuck in this kind of like almost, you know how like
Mm,
fashion is seasonal and you're trying to release stuff twice a
yeah.
year.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is a heavy incentive to churn out work, to
Mm, mm,
get stuff in. I've got this showing at this place, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But actually, the great artists of yesteryear. I mean, I'm thinking of like G.F. Watts, for example, spent like
I was thinking of him at the same time. Wow. Yeah.
He famously died having worked on this like one painting which was in his room for like 15 years or something ridiculous.
Amazing.
And I really like this idea, the idea of, you know, sometimes you put something down and you're not happy with it, and like you said, it can go one of two different ways, where I can do some tweaks and some modifications or pull various bits out, or you end up destroying it in the process. But that again is a sign of a very confident artist, I think, because someone who isn't confident stops at that point and they say, I don't want to mess it up, or I don't want to break it.
Yeah.
But it's the recognition of, okay, I'm not happy with this. This isn't where I want it to be. Let's see where we can take it, even if I consume it in the process. And I'm just very glad that this one made it. The other little last thing I'll say about it, again, I just really liked the sofa detailing, and obviously there's this kind of degraded UPVC sofa, but the treatment of the but it's the treatment of it. I think has made it quite aesthetic. It's because again, like whenever you see those kind of sofas in real life, they are genuinely gross, but you've almost sort of elevated it a little bit with the stylistic choice you've gone for the kind of breaking down, which I quite liked. But this won an award in 23 as well, didn't it?
It did, yeah. It was a Hornsby Art Prize in Australia. Which, there's a lot of art prizes in Australia, so we're lucky in that way. We can access funding and a sort of platform. Judged by artists often, and it's so it was a great experience, and I was really happy with that moment. It was tremendous.
Oh, great. Okay, let's move on to Walking Tapestry. This is another Leipzig painting, and again, in my mind, this is another kind of urban landscape style piece, but it's again, I would say, sort of tying into the dreamscape element, where it feels like there's like a city compressed into this space. You've got buildings sitting on top. You've got red brick next to concrete, next to other blocks. Was this just taken from a street corner, or is it a composite image?
It's the latter. Well, again, you're very, very perceptive. It's actually it's nearby Leipzig. There's a small town not far away called Aschersleben, and there's a residency program there that I also went on. It's with Neo Rauch, is a superstar there, and great painter. He works within the Spinnerei. He has a beautiful sort of top level studio there, and he's from Aschersleben, and he has a foundation there, a graphic Stiftung with his graphic works, excuse me. And so I went on that, and this work is part of that. You're saying it's a city kind of compressed, and that was really the idea to, and it's also in the title that on these sort of walking journeys, I sort of found elements that I liked, like the animals carved out of foliage and trees. They're from gardens. There's a crocodile in the bottom right.
The topiary, yeah, I love it.
The topiary. And graffiti.
Yeah, it's funny because again, there's a tension between these kind of naturalistic elements. So like the topiary, and there's a little bit of greenery in the background poking through, and then the most kind of like man-made urban elements like the graffiti and the kind of degraded block and stuff. So again, was this in your mind just about again trying to get a lovely a very balanced composition by pulling stuff together, or is there any kind of narrative element to it? I felt like it wasn't that narrative, but
no, there's not a sort of real sort of story or narrative to follow. What narrative there is the sort of you know, the nature of, I suppose, walking discovery, bringing in elements as they're discovered. So the painting was composed or harmonized slowly as I, literally walked around the city, um, found an element and found a way to bring it into the composition. And so there weren't many like studies beforehand. I wanted that sense of compression. I wanted a sense of the textures of the city. And looking at it now, I realized, there's all these beautiful old sort of East German buildings, and there's even a slight Russian character to a lot of these
Yeah, in the
places. And I was like,
background,
oh,
yeah, you can see that.
yeah, but I've missed all that sort of beauty, and I found the really kind of weird things. But they sort of find their place. So it's another example of this sort of exploratory sort of picture making approach.
Did you say this is from Berlin, not Leipzig? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the city's called. It's a small little town, really, called Aschersleben, and
Aschersleben.
it's
Okay, right. Yeah.
it's not well known, but just a beautiful, quaint little old city, medieval city, and so it doesn't really have any of that. It doesn't really have CBD or any skyscrapers. It's quite lovely.
Well,
Um,
if you spend any time in Germany, it is that there's, especially in the east, like you said, there is this
mm,
kind of contrast between these historical centers of town,
mm,
but also like just like the communist the
yeah.
communist elements, and also the infill after the Second World War, which
Mm,
considering how bombed to pieces a lot of Germany was, really.
mm, mm,
This is a genuine German experience. I've been down this street before
mm,
in
mm,
my various travels, so I do like that. But then I think again there is that tension in the town between some of the older bits which remain still and some
mm,
of the newer and the old and the degraded. I really quite like this. I presumed it's some kind of like broken down staircase of a
mm,
sort, but again this felt very dreamlike to
mm,
me, because I don't know. It seems like it's sort of almost kind of ripping apart as it goes up, and you're messing with the perspective at the same time.
mm.
Sorry to fixate on it. Tell me more
No.
about the staircase.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah, yeah. Well, it is sort of referencing the as part of the residency, there was I think there was a bit of a stipend, and there was accommodation, and that's a sort of reference to me going up and down these stairs, the beginning and end of every day. Like yeah, to walking during the day, which is the most of the surface area or part of the painting, and then the stairs are simplified, but the space is exaggerated, and they are cascade falling apart. So yeah, it's sort of from imagination, but it just gives this weird twisting sort of vortex character, sucked into a tunnel or something like that in the top left. And I suppose that it was a bit like that. And in a positive way. That's a sort of fun visual element that I just enjoyed constructing, and I do that kind of thing in my sketchbook, sort of just ongoingly. There's just the space that you might be observing in front of you, but then getting that whatever it is, that chair to sort of turn into something, or be in a different space, or to be mirrored, and whatever's going on to it, it becomes a car, or it becomes whatever. It's just there's an amount of play that I take to all this.
Just on the sketchbook again. I will explain about this book in a second, but not yet. I'm hyping it up. I'm building the excitement about the book reveal. But again, reading through the book feels like the sketchbook for you is you're having all of these little moments as you're out and about. You're just capturing scenes, like you said. You're evolving stuff. You're taking a shape and you're growing it and you're twisting it. The sketchbook for you seems like in a really important place to sort of lay out your ideas, which you then pull back in when you start the compositional works. Is that would you say that's a fair analogy, or?
Yeah, absolutely, it is. Yeah, I know the sketchbook is a bit of sort of cliched, or the creepy artist with their sketchbook in the corner, as easily memed and all of that. But it is very true. Like it's yeah, for me it was just always a place to go to sort of dump ideas. Like I do have quite elaborate, complex drawings in there that are finished studies. Most of them I've never removed from sketchbooks. They're sort of pretty much intact. And so it's a place where when I traveled, you go to master galleries, and you sort of study the arm of a Rubens or something like that, or the composition in a whatever, a Tintoretto or something like that. I suppose you're bringing in parts of your life, but it's a big part of the compositional process. And I find myself like I mean, with the previous work, but so many others, including the Hillen that we're talking about. I might do studies of different elements, but bringing them together is the sort of imaginative and interesting process where you forge a new image, and you find a concept out of these sort of unrelated pieces. You find a sort of rhythm, some sort of movement through them, and that is this for me, and for others. Maybe this isn't new, really, but it's like it is this constant, almost compulsive process where I'm uh, testing myself. I want to be able to construct a certain kind of space, and I'll just sort of like keep doing that in my sketchbook until I feel satisfied that I've done that, or draw an arm and redraw the arm, or a whole. And so it is I admit it's a sort of, uh, you know, a private sort of, though I'm willing to share them, a sort of a space where I can go just to explore, and yeah, and you do get interesting pages. You do get interesting sketchbooks. Sometimes you pick them up and think, oh, I was wasting my time, that whole book, and I was doing there. But I usually have about 3 or 4 on the go at once, and so they do get quite interesting. It makes a lot of things quite hard, because for one composition I'll have I suppose 50 drawings or whatever, and they're in 12 different sketchbooks, and I've got to find them, I dig them out. So it's a funny process of knowing that there's an image where I got something. I found a kind of
You'll
quality that I
remember.
wanted. Yeah, it's sort
It's
of embodied when you draw it, and then
yeah.
you're like, oh, I've got to hunt down that sketchbook to get that damn composition. So it's a bit
No,
like that.
that's really cool.
Again, they're really fun, and I just have them with me all the time. So
Yeah. Okay, well, I wanted to ask one more question at this kind of time. So after your Leipzig time, as you mentioned, doing stuff with von Kaufmann in his studio, what would you say you learnt them, like what are some of the interesting things you learned from von Kaufmann? Because that sort of surprised me a little bit, because I felt like, again, seeing the quality of paintings you're producing by the time of Leipzig, that they're very highly rendered technically. Like I said, you've got a really good direction for composition, etc. What made you think, oh, I need to do more time assisting? Was it a financial thing, so you could stay in Germany a little bit longer, or what was the motivation behind it, and what was the big learning?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess Rupert. Yeah, I mean, I started communicating in it might have been 2014 or something like that. I just reached out, and he was very friendly and welcoming, and we just sent some emails about painting, and I was asking him about career stuff, and on some specific images, because I wanted to explore working with a figure, composing multi-figure compositions and large work, and some of that was done before Leipzig, and more of it since. Yeah, I mean, I see what you mean. I had done a lot of different things before my time there, and I would say that generally, uh, throughout my career, and even early learning, that I have sort of sought out, you know, well, contemporaries, but also senior artists. I get along really well with older people, and especially I'm one of those people that just old people attracted to me. So anyway, they're always they just like me. And Rubrick's not old, but he's I sort of appreciate that wisdom, that experience, and I've just learned by just befriending them and sort of observing that there's just important things that you will observe over time. So it's not, I wasn't seeking like a sort of a sort of single line of wisdom that I went away with that was perfect. It was more just sort of understanding their nature and their approach,
Mm.
and that can't even be put into words. So with Ruprecht, I mean, yeah, there wasn't. He didn't pay me, but he was. Uh, a friend and giving advice, and he does pay some other assistants, but it was sort of just an opportunity to see him paint and see his studio. He and so I guess what I learned from him was I think mainly it was his sort of outlook and approach. Like um, he's a lovely man. He's a family man. He's a very a friendly and bright guy. He's really interesting to talk to. But his example as an artist is one of independence. Like he's forged a very interesting path in this sort of space between the classical and the experimental or modern. Um, he's he's worked with many galleries and is quite high profile. And he's but to see his drive, to see his like for example the book that we're leading to. I mean, he himself sort of has made a few books now, and he's really driven these projects. He sort of hasn't depended on galleries or individual collectors, and so there are great stories just about all of his experiences, good and bad, and challenging. Like the art
Mm.
world is a very unforgiving place, and it really just comes down to the hustle. Like you mentioned this earlier, like if you just don't have it to push through one setback after another, and you might have a hard year. I've talking to an artist the other day, and actually his father was a senior artist in Australia, and he was saying they can have a bad decade, and talking to Ruprecht, I mean, he's doing very well, but he just was someone so passionate and driven that that really attracted me to his approach, setting up projects for himself in spite of the art world and the sort of temporary agreements with galleries. I mean, I suppose I should quickly and importantly mention his own painting. I mean, he's just extremely brilliant. So he works exclusively from imagination. Um, his process painting on lino is fascinating. So I sort of helped him a little bit with that preparation and install of works. But for a small period, I sort of saw him work, and yeah, there's a real sort of fluency. There's there's a they're really sort of physical, sort of gestural, this sort of exploring linear quality to his work. Um, I just found that his work itself just I wanted to be around it, and so yeah, I mean I sort of was trained and trained myself to sort of draw from imagination. So this sort of all appeals to me, to make
Mm.
imagery out of that, which is very personal and strange potentially. There's sort of I just feel somehow a sort of connection or association with his work. Um, and so it was very positive.
Okay, brilliant. And it was at roughly this kind of time where you started
Mm.
work on.
Mhm.
I'm going to attempt to say the German version of this. Punktverschiebung.
Yeah.
Point shift.
Punktverschiebung. Yeah,
Yeah,
Punktverschiebung. Yeah,
there
just
we go.
punkt as in like point. It's just like a moment of change. And it's yeah, and you're right. Yeah, there's a number of these works that were sort of started at that time, and some were almost complete. But I brought them back to Australia and sort of finished them up. Some were quite open still, and I really had to resolve them here in Australia. But this is one, yeah. So figures, and it started as like little concept drawings, like just 5 by 10 centimeters, and the elements were from Leipzig, so that sort of piping just erupts
Industrial,
out of
yeah.
the earth. Yeah, it's quite a cool thing. And so yeah, the split between those two areas of the painting, the ground plane on the left with this sort of fractured, broken figures in conflict and disassociation, and then on the right, this sort of swarming mass of energy and sort of writhing human biomass, I guess. It was yeah, the moment of change was the split between those two, and so I guess at that time I was becoming more aware of the world and issues, and some of the issues in Europe, and some of the contradictions within people, and I sort of made it more general. It wasn't a specific sort of political point. I'm not a political artist or anything,
Mm.
but it was more about a kind of mindset of disassociation, like ignoring reality, yet reality being a very concrete thing, and juxtaposing those two states of mind, I suppose.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really a really interesting composition. It's also a sort of a pseudo landscape in the fact that you've got these kind of beautiful landscape elements, but they've sort of been ripped apart. So you've got the kind of this kind of mountain element in the background here, which has almost been. So the zoom on this is too powerful. You can still see it here. It's sort of been deconstructed. I mean, part of that is your art style as well, where there's this kind of impressionistic looseness to some of the natural elements, but these lovely kind of tree outcrops, which is almost like kind of floating off into space at the same time. So you've got these kind of beautiful natural elements, but then obviously the industrial again, combined with this the interesting biomass. These kind of, none of the faces are looking towards us, they're all kind of down, or some of them have had their mouths removed, so there is a kind of a dreamlike nightmare quality, and their kind of movement and action increases as you kind of go through the painting as well, where they're almost kind of leaping up towards the end here.
You've noticed that well. Thanks, Ro. You're really insightful. I appreciate that.
I also really like how, again, you've got this is kind of the realism part across it, or like a quote unquote realism, but you've got kind of the more like symbolic elements here. Three little mini areas. The kind of pair of shoes, the plastic bag, and the this kind of opened up bag. On we see the return of the green blob again. Then this kind of mysterious man, like almost kind of ghost of man, who's kind of falling down, but is he turning into a dog? But there's also another animal there. There's something about transformation there, in my opinion.
Yep, that's the idea. Yeah.
And then in this background, this a pair of feet with which have been maybe separated for the man, and the balloon between them. I mean, I thought this was just, it's so gothic actually, and something straight out of like Hieronymus Bosch, like a nightmare painting. It's the absurd grotesque of a severed limbs. That sort of amuse me. Is there any meaning at all behind this at all, or is this again just like a bit of an amuse? Yeah,
it is very very much like that. Those references you made, and it is absurd, and it is on that side of the picture. These sort of particularly unreal elements, and this sort of strangeness and a disturbing nature. So collectively, that sort of side of the picture. Is sort of exploring that idea, that state of mind, and just next to it on the left is this sort of brick formation that's sort of
Mm.
levitating, I suppose. So it's a it's sort of working against gravity or whatever. Um, yeah, and they're again they're not sort of literal, but they're you get the idea of it. So it was fun to sort of those elements I have sort of like the trees in the background that you zoomed in on. I've made
Mm.
them, there's sort of formal characteristics. They're sort of planar, faceted,
Yeah.
structural aspects I've emphasized, and I like that kind of contrast of something more real or perceptual. And something more about the formal interpretive aspects of drawing and painting we see in these sort of more abstracted ways to interpret and to impose order on things and to and I just sort of play with that contrast, and this was a good example of that.
Yeah. And this is going to be one of the paintings that is going to be
Mm.
down at the Power and Intimacy Exhibition. So if this has caught your imagination, come down. It's Cudo.gallery, 7th of October to the 12th of October. It's going to be in North London. Sign up, and you will get the email saying where to go to later in the
Wonderful.
week. Okay, I want to move on to you coming back to Australia from that point. I've got to ask a question here.
Mm.
You can say no if it's too personal.
Oh, yeah.
In your Kickstarter video, sorry to return to the Kickstarter
No,
video.
it's fine. It's fine.
When you talk about moving to Europe, you make it
Yeah.
sound quite definite that you're going to stay there for the rest of your life.
Oh,
Why did
interesting.
you? I don't know whether it was just a framing of it or whatever, or I read too much into it. Did you see your time in Germany always as a temporary thing, or was there a moment where you're thinking, no, I want to return home?
Yeah, oh, that's interesting. I didn't remember that, but the intention was well to sort of start again, and it wasn't at all negative to leave Australia. I had a business, I had a sort of art school and art studios, and I had to sort of build myself out of that. And as one does, it was a good life experience, and I just sort of wanted something, a challenge, and I wanted to immerse myself in that particular place. So yes, the ambition was to sort of put myself there and see what happened. However, I did have the approach while in Leipzig to not to take it too seriously, because the world is bigger than ourselves, and there's a whole community and economy there. They have their own artists. I was sort of an outsider. I was a guest. They welcomed me. I made lots of friends, and but it was a challenge. So I think over time, like I think I felt quite isolated, and so that returning was in part like a sense of of sort of I suppose a personal thing. I just didn't have the same connection, and that was interesting because the connection was sort of there was great friends, as I said, but there was just a difference. Like I suppose I ultimately learned that I wasn't German. There was just a way of that. Yeah, I mean, it's just, but it's like had when you live there, and anyone who's known this, like there is just a difference. Like I wasn't a
It's
European.
difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at first I thought, oh, maybe
It's
it's sort of,
not even a European
yeah,
thing. It's a specifically
yeah,
German thing.
yeah. Okay,
It's
well,
stuff
that's
like
interesting.
everyone waiting
Yeah,
at
yeah,
the crossing points. This
yeah,
drives me
yeah.
utterly crazy. I can't take it. I think that's a really interesting way of putting it. And
But it was nothing
also,
negative, actually. It was
yeah,
nothing. I
no,
had no
exactly,
negative experiences with them. Mm.
yeah. But okay, cool. So move back to Australia. You've got all of this kind of excitement, challenge complete, and we're going to move on to 2018, which is the hill. I've forgotten the name of it. Sorry,
Oh, that's right. Hill End.
the Hill End project. So tell me all about this.
Yeah, well, actually, while I was leaving Germany, I sort of set up this residency. I mean, which was an application process to go on a residency at Hill End, And so when I arrived back to Australia, I pretty much went straight from the plane, pretty much, into this residency. And at that time, it wasn't a full project. It was just an interesting place to go, because of Australian history. It's one of many small little mining communities that existed. They had just cycles of boom and bust over 100 years or so or more. At some point, after the sort of Second World War, it was a place where artists could kind of congregate and go because it was cheap, because it was strange. It had all this history of mining, but was now basically deserted, and the landscapes can look like that. It's just, falling apart and bizarre. Those aren't natural forms. It's because of mining, where whatever's gone on underneath the earth has just sort of changed the surface sort of topography. And so artists were drawn there, hence the artist residency. And while I was there, I just started this series of works. And again, it started from observation and drawing and sketchbook. And this was one which was a bit of everything. I started from life, developed it heavily, but then it became its own sort of painting, and sort of the lighting is exaggerated, and I change things as needed.
Well, I was going to say that, and again, I think this is where your skill as a colorist comes out, because that I can now talk about the book. There is a book just coming out now, all about this residency, the works from this time period. I've seen a preview of it. It's genuinely a brilliant read. Normally, with artist books, you sort of cycle through to find the kind of one or two pieces that are interesting and maybe read the biography of the artist. But the whole thing's really great. There's a really nice piece by our good friend of the channel, Alexander Adams, in there as well. I'll make sure to add a link in the description afterwards. But I would think it's the perfect coffee table book. But just going back to this, but inside the book, there's a picture of you plein air painting. But I would say that the landscape colors aren't really like this, or that there's an element to it. But what you've managed to do is, again, you've just kind of captured. Again, maybe it's kind of like certain moments when the sun hits the ground, but then you've managed to balance it so beautifully. So, for example, these kind of deep reds with this little cheeky twiglet appearing on the right hand side. You got that shot of kind of blue green to balance the reds. The reds are matched with some of the kind of these trees in the background. I just think, just from a color perspective, this really excites me. I think it's a really beautiful piece, and actually, all of the landscapes during this time, I think, are really exceptional. I think, I mean, if we had more time, I would have gone through every single one in turn. But I thought it was a really brilliant time period. It seems super productive, and that's one thing I also wanted to mention, is that I think you've got a great work ethic, producing, at least 3 really good quality paintings every single year. But this time period seems particularly productive for you. Did you feel that at the time, or is it lots of, like you said, stuff going in the sketchbook and ideas that you can then pull on at other times?
Yeah, the residency itself was very productive. So yeah, it's true. I am quite industrious, and that's again, it's part by example. The artists I had around me, and sort of yeah, that expectation of myself and our peers. We really strive for to make work and to push work as far as we can. So we're always very active. Yeah, but there definitely was an aspect of recording for later, observing for its own sake. You don't know what you might do with it later. The 2 works you've just shown, they're pretty much completed from life. But then I do take them back to the studio. You've got the palette wet. I took them back to Brisbane and sort of finish sort of some details there. What I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess it's this sort of thing of studying in this manner. You can sort of understand what you're seeing, make decisions about the lighting environment, the kind of atmosphere you want, the kinds of trends in the, say, the colors as they go back in space, and you can basically work from imagination at that point. You've made real decisions about the sort of the sort of perceptual aspects of it. The and so yeah, and then you can really be with the composition itself. You're not maybe lost with just new data coming to your eye from life, because it's always changing. Within a minute, the lighting's change, but those decisions, and back in the studio, you're sort of able to sort of focus on a structured image and a dramatic image, and just conclude that. And so, yeah, and you meant the color and the previous work. Yes, there's a photo in the book, and I'm there. The colors are not at all like that, and there it is. Yeah, and then see, that's an example that there is like a subtle change in hue from the sort of low points of those forms and to the high, but I've exaggerated it tremendously. And that was an example. It wasn't so much there at the beginning, but I just like the idea of it. I thought it was sort of cool to sort of suggest these sort of layers of earth, and I just heightened that quality. So it's an example of the way I like to work. It's not at all like a passive sort of copy paste one-to-one thing. It's interpretive, selective. You are creating these interesting relationships. So it means if you're thinking that way, if you're working that way, you can just sort of like turn a tree a whole different color, remove a tree, change the direction of the light source. That's quite straightforward in a way, and I like that agility, the ability, the agility, the sense of like moving elements. They're live, they're fun, they're interactive in a sense. You're heightening, say, that color shift for an effect because it's dramatic, and you can manipulate that. I like that kind of, yeah.
Just you referenced Tintoret earlier, and again that the Venetian colorists, Titian, Veronese, etc. Again, they're constantly doing that as well at the same time, messing with colors, trying to create different kind of color harmonies by playing up certain things as well. So again, I think that's it. Again, it's the painting seems quite modern, really, but it's got some of those kind of more trad elements baked into the thinking, whether intentional or not. I want to quickly, because we have been on, and I do want to cover some of the latest stuff. This for me feels like your most significant piece from that time, which is I've forgotten the name of it, like a hiptych. What's it called again? Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, that's right. A polyptych. It's multi-panel image.
Yeah. And again, it's four pieces started. This was started off Hill End, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, actually, the middle panel, there was an earlier version of all of these panels. So that middle panel was started in Hill End on the residency. I worked with it for a couple of years and ended up destroying it. There is a fragment that exists, but it was an issue with the paint and my approach. So I restarted the sort of design concept with a sort of cartoon elaborated drawing, and then I finalized that central panel in 2022. So after the residency, I sort of kept on with some of these ideas, and I had the plan to sort of make this polyptych. The other three panels fell away, and I just focused on the middle one. But it was 2022. My gallery came back to me and asked me to do a show specifically on Hill End, and that's when I took back the sort of the other three panels, started them again, and started them from scratch because of the same technical issue, and eventually found this sort of pretty involved multi-panel concoction.
I think again, this is like, in my opinion, a technical masterpiece, just in terms of the level of depth, and the quality of production, but also the colors in this are phenomenal, and just so nicely balanced. Again, if you're like wondering about this, is if you're a listener, like color, here's a little thing you can do. You can sort of squint your eyes a little bit, and then see how the kind of colors merge together. So, for example, in this the kind of the central piece here, you've got this kind of big block of yellow, but then it's balanced by the green at the top, because obviously there's the kind of color harmony between those two. There's this kind of light blue coming in from this side as well, and then the lightness balanced with the dark. So it's a very everything's very well composed, very very harmonious, but also the colors are turned up to 10 in certain areas. So you've got this kind of like almost like sulfur yellow from the one of the mine areas, or the uranium glass with the zinging green, the greens and purples. I really liked this left panel. I thought this was so cool.
Oh, thanks.
And yeah, no, I just thought this was really brilliant. There was also a reference to yes, the Dix painting in the book. I've got to say that Adams is more of a Dix fan than I am. We've had some big discussions about him in the past.
Oh,
I do actually think I do feel like this is actually his best work, because often like I don't really like how he renders his figures. Sorry to be to complain. I think it often ends up a bit cartoonish, and I would have liked a bit more realism in it. And I know he could do it, but he just he likes to sort of degrade things so much they sort of melt together. But I really love this piece. But I wanted to ask, was the choice of panels and the polyptych based on this painting? Was that the idea?
Yeah. I mean, it is a historical sort of format, and the altarpiece is a physical construction as well. The wings fold across the central panels, and it's often sort of a piece of architecture. So there's a miniature sort of version, a sort of travel version as well, for religious purposes. But it's sort of become a sort of format, or a platform for images as well, for sort of dramatic, complex images. There's a few. There's a version in the book from an Australian artist named Gary Sheed, who did something similar, the specific reference to Dix was it was specific. It was one of a few sort of references that I had, and it is an example we haven't talked about it yet, but in the sort of composing process and the generation of images, there's often specific paintings that come to mind. Like I might think about the Otto Dix, as well as a Caspar David Frederick, as well as a an Australian, William Robinson or something from Australia, and it's sort of like, oh, what would a Venn diagram of those three artists look like? Yeah, your own work becomes something else in the process of painting, of course, but there are these sort of like anchor points where you want to, you might, there's for example, a particular artwork has a kind of color harmony that you want to explore, and you're like, all right, I want to bring that color harmony, as well as a qualitative character of this composition. I want to bring them together, and I have this subject matter. So this happened a couple times in the Hill End series over those years. It was actually like 7 years total that I was continuing with it, and the Dix is an example that I had this crazy idea to make this sort of big series of paintings, and the returning to Australia, seeing the landscape was quite confronting. Like, though I grew up here and I know what it's like, I guess I forgot that it's really quite brutal. And so after 3 years in Germany, I sort of came back, and it was a particularly harsh season. So just the amount of carnage that's in the Australian landscape, like basically dead animals, and it's unbelievable. And it was a particularly harsh season. So the Dix painting came to mind, and a lot of the sort of Gothic and medieval artwork of Europe and Germany, sculpture as well as painting, and I that sort of aesthetic came with me, and the sort of the feeling and the aesthetic of this polyptych is yeah, it carries that. So yeah, it was a good
Yeah.
challenge.
No, again, I think that's a really insightful point about how artists influence us. It's like you said, I like what they're doing across here. What if I did this? Or I like the subject. There's so many different ways you can riff off other works, and I think that's again why art is just such an interesting area. Even again, just the format. I like what Dix did. Just in terms of the size or whatever. Let's do something like that. Okay, I just want to do a couple more, if that's okay.
Sure.
This is another work that's going to be in the show. I didn't quite work out where this was coming in the timeline. So this, you're saying this is still going to be in Hills, then, was it? Probably by this time.
Yeah. So the period of this time, yeah. Maybe I didn't date it. It's yeah. It was from my return. So when I was in Australia, I would have been 2019 to 20, I suppose, and yeah, it's so that's a sort of Australian backyard, and that's me and a fellow artist, and yeah, it's really about that sort of shared creative world, that you can inhabit, where you sort of share your instincts, and there's sort of an intimate space, it's a very thriving, unique sort of situation, just to share that moment with someone else, particularly a creative person, an artist, writer, and so yeah, I'm trying to think. So, yeah, so the figure has been a continual part of my work. So a lot of the recent ones, particularly Hilland, is landscape, but there's always figurative stuff going on.
It's interesting because it's obviously post Hillen, but you've sort of taken some of the landscape elements with you still, in a way that with some of your earlier figurative stuff just wasn't there. So I feel it's still kind of haunting you. I mean, it's funny saying about the connection between artists, because I felt like this is we're like physically close but quite far apart. One of you standing up, the other sitting down. You're both looking away from you. You can't see each other's eyes. You're both preoccupied. So you're in the same cerebral space, but there is no physical connection between you at the same time. So it's interesting you say that. That's just my reading of it. But again, I thought this was really, really beautiful. And again, it shows your range as well, because again, I think one of the big ruts that many modern artists get stuck in today is they sell one painting in this style or genre, and they're like, okay, that's what I'm doing now. I'm now the cat painter. I'm just going to churn out variations of this.
Yeah.
And I feel like going back to this, doing something like this, is so brave after doing some really brilliant landscapes. Do you know what I'm saying? You could have spent the rest of your life doing landscapes at that point, but you kind of successfully going back to the figure again. Yeah. So again, you got brilliant range. So hats off to you. Yeah, this was again another brilliant piece, but this is 23 now. So is this like the last year of Hilland, is it?
Yeah, well, I've continued to go back. Sorry, I don't mean to make it a complex timeline. From the when I arrived back in Australia, 2018, I basically just went back to Hill End however many times, a dozen times or something like that, and the sort of series grew. It was after that invitation of the gallery to really focus on that as a subject, where it all sort of came together. So this was from this image, this painting was constructed from after several trips there, and it's become the cover of the book, and it's yeah, an example of some of the modest and bizarre sort of elements you see in the Australian land. You just see you see an exploded shed, just like it's some huge industrial elements just scattering the land. Some of them were dwellings. You don't even know what they are sometimes. You'll be walking around in these areas and there's just a huge pile of metal in the middle of nowhere. And you have no idea how it could have got there. It's inhabited by animals. Like it's just a bizarre place. And in this little town, there's several churches remaining. And I sort of exaggerated this hill. I sort of invented this hill and juxtaposed, this sort of squalor against this sort of far away, heavenly sort of a piece of architecture, and these shadows drawn up to it. So it is that sort of magic realism again, playing around.
No, that's and again the color landscape changes as well. You've got these kind of whatever earthy hues, like very vibrant greens, and then it's purples and blues and turquoises instead. So again, I like that. Again, a lot of the works you can really feel the kind of spaciousness of Australia. The power of the landscape, and there's something about landscape versus man in here as well, and the degradation of time, etc.
Yeah, I love it. Yep.
Now, in 24, you've moved to Sydney now instead. What was the logic behind that? Because Brisbane boy, born and raised, your studio's in Brisbane, your gallery's in Brisbane. Sorry, I should say. Why move to Sydney?
Yeah, well, it was career and personal, and luckily I do have two galleries at the moment, and one is in Sydney, so there is there is a professional connection there. The art school that we spoke about earlier, Julian Ashton Art School, it's in Sydney. So I did spend about 8 years here, or going on 9 years maybe, and so I do have quite a big network and friends and sort of collectors and that kind of stuff here. So it does make sense as for career reasons. There's bigger population, big city.
Yeah.
It's all those reasons. It's a really exciting place. So we're sort of heavily involved here. And so it was it was maybe exhausting what Brisbane could offer me. My family's there, so that's challenging. But Sydney just felt like the right thing to do. So since returning, it's been incredible and very positive, and I love working here. I've been really prolific, and it's also closer to Hill End, so I've been able to go out there back and forth and just sort of touch base with the landscape. And if there's say even in the painting we're looking at, if there's a question mark about an element that I need, I can drive. It's sort of a 3 or 4 hour drive, but I can get there and just like spend a few days and think, oh, I've got this question mark in this painting, or I need something I want to explore. You may not come back with something, but it is convenient, or more convenient, to be in Sydney and to finish this series.
And because you're doing a show alongside the book, is that right, with the gallery?
That's correct, and this is the Brisbane Gallery. Yeah, so we're doing a solo show at the end of this month, the 26th September it opens. We're also launching the book, so that is the sort of official book launch, and it's the first time the polyptych, those 4 panels, will be sort of physically installed and seen by the public. And Farah, I'm sorry, on your show here now is the first time I've presented, or we've presented that to the public. So it's an exclusive in that sense. Those 4 panels together haven't been seen. Yeah. It's going to be a great thing that's happening in a few weeks.
So if you're in Australia, it's going to be worth the journey to check out. I mean, I was having a bit of a nose round, seeing the gallery and who else they're pulling in there, and the kind of the state of Aussie art, and it was interesting. I would say that the technical quality in Australia seems to be a little bit higher than the UK average. Like there's a lot of slop, a lot of slop paintings in the UK. But I do have to say that I felt like your paintings are a world and away I don't want to do anyone else down, but it's just more like there's so much soul in your works compared to everyone else. So I think this is going to be a really important moment in of the year to go and check it out. I've just got a couple of other paintings. Maybe I'll quickly put the miners one in as well, because I did quite like that. This was interesting because, again, this is kind of combining some of your skills with figures, but also composition. And this is one of the reasons why the book was so good. You get to see the kind of the going from sketch to one of the early kind of value color sketches, something like that, through to the finished works. You really get to see the process in this. And this was interesting because there's almost kind of like little classical elements in it, like the contrapposto here on the right hand side, or the leg up, like Botticelli's Mars or something like that. You know, so tell me about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, it's this has been a really that painting was a great challenge. It's well, you showed that landscape a little while ago, which was small, and it had the same formations with exaggerated color, and that was from 2018. But when I arrived back Hill End on one of the trips, there it is. Yeah, I had the idea of I just thought it would be a fantastic sort of stage setting for figures at different levels, immersed in those forms, and so. And it was another example where several other paintings sort of came to mind. There's a hero of mine in Australia. He was a war artist named Ivor Heel, and there's an image in the book which this painting directly sort of references of sort of miners, but in that case soldiers bathing. And this is sort of way the mind works, I suppose. You just make associations, and I just sort of that was a bit of a springboard for this painting. So mine is bigger than his, and this painting is bigger than the previous landscape you showed. It's about 1 meter by 1 meter high by 1 meter 20 wide or something. And a couple of the figures are sort of borrowed, as you said, from classical references and other paintings too. It's the landscapes itself is now dry. There's no water there, but back in the day, to sort of help sustain the town as a water supply to drink, and for mining purposes, in their sort of part of the mining process need a lot of water. There was a dam right at that spot, and that was a sort of interesting insight that you wouldn't know if you just sort of walked around, because nowadays it's just full of kangaroos and goats and just scrub, bush, heavy bush. So I basically I did get someone to model, and a couple people in the landscape as well as back in my studio. And I composed this image through the kind of compositions we were talking about, just a myriad of different arrangements, poses, areas of focus, and eventually sort of found this image in the paint, and it was a really fun process. There's challenges along the way. You do really get stuck, and I think I had to go back there once and figure out some of the lighting. But really, the lighting was ultimately sort of invented, and it was. Trying to think of what else to say. It's I suppose the subject then is the miners themselves, the people that would work in Hill End. It's my vision of them taking a break and just hanging out, but a sort of masculine sort of version of that, as though they sort of rise out of the earth, I suppose.
No, exactly. And but what I like about it subject wise is two things. So obviously, when you're thinking about people at work or men at work, you think of like French realism and Soviet realism at the same time. And this neither has really the qualities of those those kind of styles, in the sense that the French realism is like all about displaying things as they are, exactly, and the Soviet realism is about kind of, I guess, kind of enhancing the spirit of man, you could say, at best, although often it goes to kitsch.
Yeah.
What I like about this is again, it's about, you're sort of conjuring a long forgotten memory. This scene obviously never happened in reality, in the sense with this composition and layout, etc. It is from imagination, but it's based on the past, and it's based on like people in the landscape as well. So I like that. You're almost kind of like it's almost like an archaeological element to it, or something like that. You're kind of going deep into the past in a way that no one else has done, and also, again, like I mentioned, with those classical poses that you're kind of pulling into there, none of them feel unnatural at the same time. I think one of my continual problems with a lot of classical work today is this kind of a deep unnatural nature it has to it, because everything's a pose, everything is fake, and none of this feels fake at all. It all feels like a group of guys just having a break for a second. So I thought this was really good. Interestingly, I felt like you pulled back on the colors a little bit for this. So the major ones in my mind are this kind of like beautiful light Naples yellow and like an olive green, with with occasional shots of red, so you could get a bit of flesh tones for the bodies, and then the blue in the sky there. So but because it's so rich from a design perspective, you haven't had to amp up the colors in a similar kind of way. But I thought this was a really excellent piece.
Thank you.
Okay, let's finish on the kind of last one on the list here. This is cacti with pink Hoya cutting and agapanthus, and again, it's this interesting scene out of a house. But once again, I think Hill's End haunts you here a little bit with the cacti and the different foliage. And Adam's put in, or there was a picture in there of this little cactus scene that I've put in for reference. But I couldn't quite find the connection between the two. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the piece and.
And it's not explicitly stated the connection in the text. It was a decision of the publisher to put in a newer work of mine and sort of give an example of that sort of conversation across time between artists, or that sense of reverence and reference to another artist. That's that period of new objectivity in Germany. It's brilliant, and Scholz is an exponent of that. I love that painting, the semophones, and you can almost hear their sort of blaring character. That scene of my scene is sort of from my local area where I sort of live, and it was an explicit reference to his work. I just think it's a fascinating composition, and he was a brilliant artist. And there's I will do several more versions, because there's things I want to reference that the semophones from his. In this area, there's some aeroplanes that go. So visually, I sort of wanted this association to his work of those sort of floating horizontals of aeroplanes in the sky, and I will do at least another version of this. Cacti themselves are so fascinating. Obviously, their forms, their sort of twisting character, they're just really interesting to paint and explore. So it was just fun to sort of set up that situation. Sort of exaggerated the colors again, chosen a sort of particular kind of color harmony, departed from nature, and as you say, like finding these particularly kind of twisted, strange forms which exist all throughout the Hill End work, and I can't seem to let go of. There's just something visually and compelling about them, and the process of drawing these sort of those kind of uh, very writhing, sculptural, dynamic forms is fun. You're sort of rendering and exploring them, and it just is an interesting process. So I like that sort of challenge to draw and paint these elements. Um, so
just kind of responding to that. You're saying that kind of like some of the colors are unnatural. In my mind, all of the colors you use are natural. It's just like you don't see them all the time. So again, like some of the kind of the sky colors, for example, again, there's that hint of purple in, like, but I've seen a sky like that before. And you always keep to a spectrum of colors that is believable, or like I said, that I can imagine that moment, or even if it didn't happen, or even if it didn't happen at that time, it's sort of still tethered to the ground, as opposed to someone totally moving outside of that. So I think that's one thing I would say. But then I also like your choice of cactus. Again, I think it's an interest, like you mentioning about the kind of gnarled. This is a German cactus right here. It is structured and regular, and carefully looked after, etc. This is an Australian cactus here. It's kind of like gnarly, and there's a story to it, and it's had to survive. This is pampered. This has been well looked after by a German horticulturalist its entire life.
I like that.
This cactus has had to survive a blazing hot summer with no water for months and months. So I think there's a character of the land in there, and I thought this was really beautiful as well, and a good addition to the book as well. Well, look, so I've got a little bit of time. I want to talk about the future. Obviously, we're doing the show together in October. What's the plans for the rest of the year, for the next couple of years? This is why I was saying, going back to that stuff at the start, Ryan, where I wasn't intentionally trying to gas you up too much, but I just feel like someone of your monumental talent should have a better reputation, and I hope the move to Sydney will start to kind of push you in that direction. I would say that if this was in the UK and you moved to London, you just wouldn't have that much success, because the whole game is rigged against this kind of art, and your kind of technical skills, and also your kind of thinking behind stuff. So I'll be interested to see how you get on with Sydney, and I really hope that you get the recognition you deserve. But let's hear about your plans for the future. What's going on after these the shows and the book, etc.
Yeah, well, there's the launch and the promotion of the book, so I'm sort of readying myself to do more things like this, to reflect on that time and really give a sort of comprehensive account of those years and that body of work, and really, I suppose, cutting off that body of work, because there's probably, I'm in the studio now, there's probably, I don't know, there might be close to a dozen works that didn't make it. They're either not quite finished paintings, so they're not in the book, they're not in the show, or they're just in a state of I don't know where they're at. They might be finished eventually. I'll go back to Hill End and I'll figure them out over time. I'm quite stubborn like that. I don't sort of throw much work away, so Hill End will sort of haunt me, I suppose, in a good way. So there's stuff like that in the background to do, but tying the Hill End project up, I basically just have a lot of ideas and sketchbook pages and plans for new work, including figurative work, figurative work from imagination, and there is opportunities to do exhibitions, potentially other projects. I'm just in early stages. My time here in Sydney is quite active, so I get to a lot of exhibitions and meet a lot of artists, and I'm still learning about the art world. I mean, it's so big, and the higher levels of it are still that little bit opaque for me. Um, I'm my approach is sort of what we've covered is my approach is that yeah, I mean, I haven't really I don't, I'm not a big name or anything like that. I'm in the art world, but I'm uh, so I'm known and liked, I think. But I have had this sort of slow career development where I suppose I'm prioritizing my studio time and that work. And as you said, I haven't sort of found the cat paintings that just sell really well and that I've had to pump out. I really would hate to be in that position, and I do know
Well, I was going
people
to say
who
that's the good thing, and again, like
mm,
I don't think I know any other guy who has had such a long run where he's been able to develop his work so much.
mm,
Because again, going back to how I feel like the game's rigged a little bit. Again, in the UK,
mhm,
this is something that Adams talks about quite a lot, where
mm,
the Arts Council has such a strong influence over
yeah,
how money's distributed,
yeah,
unless you hit certain boxes or your work's on talking about certain kind of issues.
mm,
Again,
mm,
the fact that your work isn't political, and again, like what's political about a landscape,
mm,
that in
mm,
itself is a problem. The fact that you're not talking about something in your work in
mm,
some
mm,
is itself a problem, even though it doesn't make any sense. And the history
mm,
of painting has had many works where it's just about
yeah,
the sensuousness nature of
mm,
man interacting with
yeah,
painting.
indeed, yeah.
But I do feel things are changing, and you know now is the best time
Mm,
to start that ascent, and hopefully all of the stuff that you're doing is going to increase your profile. I would ask that anyone's listening now. Ryan's on Twitter. He's got an Instagram. He's got his own website. So do follow him on those platforms to keep up to date with what's happening. Buy that book. It's on pre-order now, out by the end of the month. Go to the
mm,
show as well. And yeah, I think it's been really interesting, really fun to kind of chat through stuff. Is there anything that you felt that I missed out that you were
oh,
burning to kind of look at all from
that's
the?
oh no, I just arrived open to this conversation. No, I've really enjoyed it, and really appreciate your insight and attention on my work. It's yeah, no, it's been a pleasure and a great opportunity. So I really appreciate it, Ferro. Thank you.
No worries. Well, look, we'll call it a day for now. I think the plan is hopefully in a couple of weeks time we're going to get
Mm,
all of the major artists involved in the show on the stream to chat again, maybe in 2 weeks' time, and introduce one of the guys who we haven't officially announced yet, who is now confirmed is going to be in the show. So keep listening out. We'll talk through some of the kind of ideas behind it, the conception, and yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Please leave a comment, message what your favorite painting was, and like I said, please subscribe to Ryan's social platforms to find out a little bit more for the future. But thanks very much for your time, Ryan, and we will
thank you.
catch you all later.